I'm joined now by Richard Barrett. He's the former head of counterterrorism for British intelligence agency MI6. Thank you, Mr. Barrett, for being with us. What kind of intelligence would this initiative to increase security measures at some airports, what kind of intelligence would all of this be based on, in your opinion?
Well, I think that probably there's been something specific, and you could see that in the statement put out by the American embassy in Uganda. So I think Entebbe Airport may have had a specific threat, but there's a more general concern, I think, that people who are good bomb makers in al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula in Yemen have gone up to Syria, northern Syria, and maybe passed on their knowledge to people there.
So should we be concerned that this is very real, possibly imminent? I mean, should people not fly? Well,
I think there's always a threat, and it goes sort of up and down, but I don't think it goes down a hell of a lot, and I don't think it goes up a hell of a lot. Of course, when something happens, we'll all say, well, surely we should have known more about that. But the threat, after all, remains fairly high all over the world, and particularly in Western countries.
And we think of security checkpoints. We already take our shoes off, we remove our laptops, we take off our watch, we do all of these things. Yet every time there was an attempt on an airliner headed to the United States, that person, the underwear bomber, the other types of attacks, the shoe bomber, for instance, were not caught at security checkpoints. They were neutralized on board the plane. So what difference would it make?
Yeah, well, that is quite true. But of course, all those checks do act as a deterrent as well. And I think it makes it harder for people to smuggle on a bomb. It would be relatively straightforward, perhaps, to put it in your luggage, to make a liquid bomb, like indeed the 2006 plot that was uncovered in United Kingdom intended to do. So those checks aren't nothing. But I agree with you. Of course, the bomb makers only have to get it right once, and we have to get it right all the time.
And do you think that what's happening in Syria, and we've heard it from officials in the UK, in the United States, that these, in many cases, foreign jihadi fighters that are holders of passports in Western nations, that they clearly pose a threat to the security of key strategic targets, including airliners? I mean, should this be a real concern now?
Yes, well, I think it does heighten the concern because there's a lot of Western fighters now in northern Syria and a lot of people, therefore, who could be recruited. That doesn't mean to say that all of them, or even anything but a tiny percentage, are vulnerable in that way. But if you say you got 400 or 500 people from the United Kingdom there, or having gone there at one point, you don't need very many to create a bit of a problem. So I think it's quite right to be alert to that possibility.
When you said specific threat, and that this is why the Department of Homeland Security in the U.S. would issue this type of warning and increase security measures, what does that mean exactly, specific? That it's geographically specific, that they were able, for instance, to monitor phone calls, communications, to get something tangible here?
Well, I think there's always a whole load of threat information coming in. And I think one of the objectives of terrorist groups, of course, is to make everybody afraid. It's not necessarily to kill them. It's just to make them afraid of being killed or attacked. So I think there's always a tremendous amount of chatter about attacks that may be being planned. And, of course, most of it doesn't come off at all. But nonetheless, trying to sort out something within that could be real, I think is quite an art. And I think that depends an awful lot on sophisticated assessment of the sort of information that's coming in.